visit the Great Wall at Mutianyu, you can actually take a chairlift up to the top, hike around a bit, and then take a toboggan down. The kids will love it.
You heard it right, a chairlift. Over the last decade, tourism in China has been on the rise, and amenities like this are being added to make it easy for tourists to explore. In Beijing, modern structures, many built for the 2008 Summer Olympic Games.
I'm at the bird nest where most of the Olympic sports happen, like track, field.
Sit side by side with ancient attractions like the Forbidden City.
Each brick that they put in those was a gold brick.
And the Great Wall.
Look, way out on that mountain, it goes over that hill, then over another hill, and then you can barely see it out there.
Where ancient China comes to life in kids' imaginations.
I need the hunter coming.
Join us as we explore the old
I'm taking a rickshaw in Tiananmen.
and the new.
We're in a very crowded subway. Very, very crowded.
And mingle with locals in
Travel Kids China! I'm Nathan. And I'm Seamus.
and we're Mom and Dad.
We're traveling around the world discovering amazing countries, new cultures, and really wild experiences together.
Come along with us as we learn all about our planet and about being together as a family.
As we discover the wonders of the world, the wonders of nature, and sometimes wonder, what were we thinking in Travel with Kids? Once known as Peking, Beijing is the capital city of China and one of the most crowded cities in the world. Early humans lived near Beijing 500,000 years ago, and about 10,000 years ago, the first walled city of Ji was built there. It later became one of 4 capitals of the Liao dynasty. In the 1200s, the city was destroyed by Genghis Khan and his army, and rebuilt by his grandson Kublai Khan. It was then destroyed and rebuilt by the Ming dynasty. They made it their capital and constructed some of Beijing's most famous sites, like the Forbidden City. In 1949, a decades-long civil war ended when the People's Liberation Army took control of Beijing in 1966. In 1989, the Tiananmen Square protests were held here in Beijing, so we're heading over to that square, which is situated in front of the Forbidden City, to find out more. One tip we always do, especially in hotels in big cities, is take one of the hotel business cards and put it in the kids' pocket. That way, if for some reason they really get lost, this will help them get their way back to the hotel.
I'm taking a rickshaw in Tiananmen. I'm in a rickshaw. It's kind of crazy because we're driving through buses and cars in a big, busy street, but then we go into nice back streets.
Hello!
On the way to Tiananmen Square, the driver takes us through old hutongs, narrow streets.
It's cool because he kind of just like slows down, let us look, and then goes back.
Be very clear when you negotiate with rickshaw drivers. Make sure you set a price before you go and ask if it's a per person or a per rickshaw price. Also, make sure they're dropping you on one of the side streets leading off the square and not the gate, also named Tiananmen. We didn't specify and get dropped off on the back side of Tiananmen Gate. The passage to the square is not open to the public from this direction, but we do get to witness the changing of the guard at the Forbidden City before continuing on to the square. Tiananmen Square was built in 1651 and was enlarged in the 1950s, making it one of the largest city squares in the world. Near the middle of the square is the mausoleum of Mao Zedong, a founding father of the People's Republic of China. He was the chairman of the Communist Party of China and ruled China from 1949 until his death in 1976. He founded the Red Army in 1927 and led them in civil war against the Nationalists, a war they won in 1949 with the declaration of the People's Republic of China. Mao declared the founding of the new nation from Tiananmen Gate at the entrance to the Forbidden City. Chairman Mao's body is on display in a crystal coffin inside the mausoleum, but be prepared to wait in long lines and check your bags.
See him? The boys are more interested in the giant picture of Mao Zedong and what lies beyond it. This is Tiananmen Gate, or the Gate of Heavenly Peace, and is one of the most famous views of the square.
Why do you put his picture up?
Mao's portrait has been hanging there since the founding of the People's Republic of China. Today, Tiananmen Square is home to lots of tourists and vendors selling toys and souvenirs.
I just went to Tiananmen Square, and through the underpass there's lots of sellers, and I bought myself a Mao watch.
Past Tiananmen and Meridian Gates, you enter the Forbidden City.
Constructed in the 1400s by the Ming Dynasty, the Forbidden City, also known as the Palace Museum, took about 1 million workers 14 years to build. It measures about a half-mile across and hosts almost 1,000 buildings with more than 8,000 rooms. It's surrounded by a 25-foot wall with 4 exterior gates. At the entrance off Tiananmen Square, audio tours come in several languages.
Audio tours?
Which language?
Oh, English.
English.
Is there a kids version?
No,
Just adults?
just this.
Okay. 200? Yeah, but you get some back at the end.
Which offer lots of useful information and keep the kids engaged.
Each brick down there was a gold brick.
The golden bricks, which were actually dyed that color, were specially made for the palace.
And why would they put gold on the ground?
Some of the giant stones were brought from a quarry about 40 miles away. They wet the roads down in winter to make them icy and slid the stones to the palace for construction. We enter into the outer court along with throngs of people.
The Forbidden City can get really crowded, especially during the summer. But if you stay off to the side gates, there's a lot more room. It's more relaxing. You can take a chance to really soak in the atmosphere.
The outer court is where business took place with the imperial government, but it's also where official government ceremonies took place. So we head back in the center to the Hall of Supreme Harmony, where the emperors were crowned.
The last emperor of China was crowned here, and the ceremony scared him so much that he cried. He was only 3.
As we enter the inner court where the emperor and his household lived, the kids marvel at the huge wooden gates, which they recognize from movies.
We're here in the Forbidden City, and this is where part of Karate Kid was filmed.
The inner court was only for royalty or people who had been summoned there. Off to the side, air-conditioned museums hold over 1 million artifacts and pieces of art from the dynasties. So look guys, here's a picture of what it used to look like. And the kids are impressed by the emperor's treasures.
This is gold plated.
So the emperor would eat off gold plates and gold bowls.
And gold spoons.
Then we pass through to the Imperial Gardens. When you get to the Imperial Gardens, go to the side, there's all these small little areas where the kids can relax. It's much less crowded, more quiet. And imagine what it would be like living there using objects found in the gardens. And playing around.
You saw it, didn't you?
Back in Tiananmen Square, we stroll through the National Museum of China, where the kids recognize some of the places we just saw in the paintings.
In the Forbidden City, we looked through the window, that window over there, and we saw that swan up there and the hologram, but the people weren't there.
And we learn history through the Chinese perspective. Outside, we find some peaceful gardens, where ladies dance and boys join in a game that looks similar to hacky sack.
It's like a feather thing with a... Whoa. Okay. No. That's hard. Yeah, we'll try.
And we wander through the small alleyways off Tiananmen Square. Be sure to get off the main busy tourist streets and explore the back hutongs. These are the traditional Chinese neighborhoods. Most of them, a lot of them, have been plowed over for new construction.
This is where regular Chinese people live, and they recycle so much. Each one of these are filled up with like 1,000 water bottles, soda bottles.
The narrow streets are lined by traditional buildings that host people's homes, along with shops and tiny restaurants, serving all sorts of interesting local foods.
These are eggs inside this rock, but they boil it up in this, so the rock like shaves off, but they don't have to clean it.
3块4块
3.5.
3.5它长这样能给脏吗？
There's an ostrich egg in the refrigerator. Avocado candy. Pineapple candy.
Chickens run across the alleys. Children play, locals smile and laugh and go about their daily business, seemingly unaffected by the nearby tourist attractions. You really get an authentic look at the way real local Chinese people live. The kids stop and talk to local kids and buy a few things at the market street stall.
1. So, 5. Oh, 5. 5's different than 1.
Yes.
15? We bought them at the markets and they're like really cool. When you throw them like this, they come back to you and you can catch them. And it really...
And we end our day with a traditional Chinese opera performance, which turns out to be more like a variety show, and tea at the Lao She Tea House. The colorful costumes and music are exciting, and the kids love the stunts like human pyramids and balancing acts. It's almost like circus meets symphony. Then it's back out on Tiananmen Square to stroll, and Seamus finds something else cool to buy.
They sell you these kites and they at least have to go like 5 stories high. Look at that one.
And we get our pictures taken again. You really feel like a movie star sometimes in China, especially with kids. As many locals will ask to take pictures with you, it can be lots of fun. While yesterday we explored Beijing's traditional side, today we're off to discover its more modern side. And that starts with breakfast at a most surprising place.
I'm getting dumplings for breakfast at 7-Eleven with a pot of rice. They have different kinds of Chinese food like noodles, different kinds of meats, egg rolls for breakfast.
And like most of the world, takeaway restaurants are much cheaper than sit-down. So we find a set of stairs along a relatively quiet neighborhood and have a street picnic. Having dumplings for breakfast on the side of the street in Beijing, right here by this temple of the something. We actually got these at a convenience store. They make these for breakfast. They're really yummy.
I like Dublin.
What, Dublin's?
Dublins.
But if dumplings equal dinner in your mind, or you have a picky eater, don't worry, there's lots of options. Dumplings? You want a side?
For picky kids like my brother, they still have normal foods.
Croissant?
But those chips may come in different flavors than you're used to at home.
I got hot and sour fish soup flavored chips.
But for breakfast, Seamus went a different way. Seamus got a donut. Where's your donut?
Right.
Then we head down Wang Fujing Street. a pedestrian shopping area. It's packed with Western chain restaurants and clothing stores. We wander into an English bookstore where we all pick out some books for our next train ride. A 3-day train ride from Beijing to Hanoi coming up.
After breakfast and shopping, it's time to explore one of Beijing's most recent tourist attractions. So we hop a cab and the boys are delighted by what they see.
Whoa. Is the water cube where they swim?
I'm at the bird nest where most of the Olympic sports happen, like track, field, and the opening ceremony.
Beijing National Stadium, also known as the Bird's Nest for its interesting shape.
Why'd they build it all like?
The steel supports were originally designed to hold a retractable roof, but it was decided not to include the roof in construction. But the support stayed, giving the illusion of the sticks of a bird's nest. The stadium holds about 80,000 people and hosted one of the most spectacular opening ceremonies of any Olympic Games. Just across the way, the Beijing National Aquatic Center, also known as the Water Cube, was where most of the swimming and diving events took place. So we buy tickets. Not always as easy as it seems if you don't speak Chinese.
Each? For one is 160? Yes.
Language can be a barrier here,
But if we don't want...
especially in the northern and rural parts of China. But there's usually someone around who knows a few words of English.
Because the boy too younger.
And charades can help. But it's also good to download a translator app on your phone just to be safe.
Water. How much? 2? 20? 3? 4.
4.
And with tickets in hand, we head in. On one side is the pool where Michael Phelps' famous record-breaking swims were held.
He actually jumped off there and swam?
And swam he did. He won 8 gold medals during the 2008 Olympics here, the most first-place finishes for one person in any single Olympics game.
Remember the butterfly and he won by like this much?
He now has a total of 22 medals, making him the most decorated Olympian of all time. 25 Olympic records were broken during the 2008 Games. And on the other side of the center, there's something that will make the boys join in that super speed.
Cool! Oh, look at that red one.
In 2010, the center was reopened as a water park with a wave pool, rides,
Hiking going that one's fun too.
and super fast slides.
You get inside this chamber, and then it goes 3, 2, 1, and the chamber releases, and you go shooting down, gets all lifted up, and I was like, "Ugh!"
After they're all slided out, we go out on the Olympic green and watch some more speedy potential Olympians practice.
How do you speed skate? Do you have to have your hands behind your back?
It sure looks like it from these kids. They have form and speed. Then it's time to head back to the hotel. But this time we choose to go by modern transport and we hop the subway.
Here's a tip. The last cars of the train are much less crowded. Everybody congregates right towards those first cars. So keep walking and you'll find a lot less crowds.
Thank you.
Gotta find the blue line. Seamus.
Now let's just hope we're going the right way.
But the maps are pretty easy to understand, and the locals helpful, even if it is charades and a lot of pointing.
Now that we've seen the two sides of Beijing, we're going to head out of town a ways to see one of China's most famous attractions, the Great Wall. There's buses that run daily, and you can buy your tickets usually a day or two in advance. We hired a private taxi and a guide through our hotel. The guide is very taken with the boys and explains everything in great detail. Our first stop is a tea house. This is a way for tour guides and drivers to make a little extra money.
It's made by tea. It's a pomelo, tea cookies.
If you don't want to make the extra stops, be sure to negotiate that ahead of time, especially if you don't want to make extra stops. The tea house is then followed by a pottery factory, where the guide gives the boys a really good idea of how Chinese vases are made in this shop.
In China, the vase it symbolizes peace because it has the same pronunciation as peace in Chinese.
They use a wire overlay in the vases.
Here's the wire on the wall. And they bended the wire, making a different shape like that.
The design of the wire is then filled with paint.
Then they refire 8 to 10 times until the little compartments are full.
Can I try?
To make a design.
Dragon is the emperor. Now it's for husband. Phoenix is the empress, the wife. So put them together means happy family, happy marriage. Yeah.
They then polish them up.
Before and after. Yes.
Whoa.
And put them out for tourists to buy. We're not buying them today, but the guide doesn't seem to mind. Definitely not high-pressure sales here.
Back in the car, we play charades.
Caveman?
And in no time, we arrive at the Great Wall. There's several places to see the Great Wall. Just outside Beijing, the most popular is bustling. But go just a bit further to Tiananmen, and you're rewarded with slightly less crowds. If you're looking for a more authentic, even less crowded place to visit, try Simitai or Jinshanling. But keep in mind, some places along the wall have not had any restoration and may be difficult to climb for elderly people or small children. We head to Tiananmen, which is about an hour and a half outside Beijing. It's still touristy, but not quite as crowded as bustling, and they have lots of amenities for tourists.
If you visit the wall at Tiananmen, you can actually take a chairlift to the top, and then there's plenty of time to hike around and take a toboggan down. It's a lot easier on these little legs. Let's check it out.
Have fun, guys. Okay.
We head up the hill,
I'm riding a ski lift up to the top of the Great Wall.
and as we glide up, we get a peek at the wall through the trees,
I see the Great Wall of China.
which sparks some questions.
Can't you see the wall from outer space?
Well, yes and no. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to see the Great Wall with the human eye. However, astronauts have taken photographs that from the space station clearly show the wall. At the top of the lift, the wall stretches into the distance in all directions.
See the watchtower there, there. Those all have wall in between them. It goes up to that watchtower. Can you see it over there? And down, and then it connects with the one we're walking on, and then it keeps going.
The wall runs over 5,500 miles through desert and forest. That's about the same distance as driving from Los Angeles to New York and back.
It's a lot.
Can you imagine building all this?
It winds up and down hills and can get very steep in places.
Guys, it's so steep they had to make stairs.
The wall is punctuated in spots by watchtowers. So when we arrive at the top, we head off to check one out.
Whoa, look at this guard tower.
I can see why this wall was so impenetrable. From the top, you can see for miles.
Oh, look, way out on that mountain, it goes over that hill, then
and over another hill, and then you can barely see it out there. So it looks like a road.
Originally, the wall was built in sections by different regions to protect their area. But under the Qin dynasty, where the states were united, the wall was rebuilt as long sections of a wall to keep out invaders to the north. The kids marvel at the size.
Man, I can't believe how big this wall is. It's huge. I wonder how they built this on the slopey hill.
And they wonder how they built it so long ago, as early as 700 BC, when tools were limited.
I wonder how they started. I mean, you just put one brick and then wouldn't it slide down?
So they would have had to just carry brick by brick up, carts of bricks all the way up this mountain.
They use different materials for different parts of the wall depending on what part of the country it's in. In the mountains like here, there's more stone, where in the plains, they used more mud and bricks. During the Ming Dynasty, the wall was reinforced to keep out the nomadic Mongol people from the north from raiding villages.
So they just kept walking that way to try to find a way around.
Being here and learning this history sets the kids' imagination ablaze. The thousands of watchtowers that line the wall were used for soldiers to stand guard. They used fire and smoke signals between the towers to alert the other towers of intruders.
Man, this is steep. It's like...
We head further down the wall to the next watchtower. But it's getting hot and humid here, and the wall gets very steep.
This is steep.
And the little legs can get worn out fast.
I'm hot. I'm tired. I'm thirsty. I'm hurting.
So bring plenty of water and be prepared for some steep hikes. There are vendors that do sell limited refreshments along the wall. But the boys are troopers and fascinated by exploring what's around the next bend. And soon we arrive at our next exit point, and it's definitely an exciting way down.
Taking a slide from the top of here all the way down.
Look at this warning. Toboggan is dangerous.
And after a few questions on how to steer,
How do you make it go and stop?
nerves are put to rest, and we have a blast gliding down the mountain and the Great Wall of China.
So fun. This is so fun. Don't run into me, please.
As we wind through the forest where Chinese soldiers once patrolled for Huns, the wall soaring above us, I think about how many iconic sites we have visited, both ancient, the Forbidden City in Tiananmen Square, and modern, the Bird's Nest and the Water Cube. And I think of what a great family adventure China has been, and look forward to discovering more of it as a family.